You're into music and maybe you're on social media, then you may have come across my next guest. 23-year-old Matt Walters from Frome, or Reductio as he's known online, is a composer and organist. He's got an upcoming concert in Wells at the Cathedral, which unites classical and contemporary styles from Bach to Hans Zimmer to The Weeknd and Kate Bush even. Before we have a chat with him, let's hear a bit of him in action with his original composition, Lux. Beautiful, this, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant. Matt, that just sounds so gorgeous. Perfect for a Sunday morning. Thanks for joining us on the programme.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Now, you've got this incredible concert coming up at Wells Cathedral in just a couple of weeks' time. But let's go right the way back to the beginning. Where did your love of organ music come from?
So when I was at school, my piano teacher, Chris Tambling, he asked if I wanted to try the organ, and I gave it a go, and my footwork was actually quite good. He joked that it was because I was a footballer. I played a lot of football when I was young, and yeah, I just kind of began playing for quite a few years and slowly grew into it.
Of course, a lot of people will be familiar with the piano. It's black and white keys in front of you. You play with your hands, obviously. The organ, though, requires a bit of handwork, and you mentioned there the footwork. A lot of people perhaps won't be completely aware of how complex the footwork has to be. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on, and also you'll be changing stops and using the swell pedal, which is something which you open to increase the volume of the organ. But yeah, it's kind of like riding a bike or driving a car. It's really, really hard at the start, but once you get used to it, it becomes very natural. And
you've played lots of different organs, lots of different cathedrals and churches around the country. Are they sort of fairly similar? Is it sort of you can, like a car, once you pass your test of one, you can drive them all? Is it a bit like that?
Yeah, it is kind of like that. And especially in the cathedrals, because it's such a large space, the kind of reverberation is very nice. So yeah, it's kind of very similar, but also it depends on the instrument.
And you're a Frome boy. Where did you start practicing organ when you were first getting into it?
So I practiced at school mainly, at Downside Abbey. So yeah, I've been very lucky to be able to go in there and play. And the monks of Downside have been very accommodating. And yeah, last year I began filming things online and trying to push this uniting of the contemporary and the classical.
Tell us through a bit about this, because I've seen you so often pop up on my TikTok feed with some of the bits and pieces that you do, where you film some incredible pieces that you perform. When did you start doing that? And tell us a bit about how quickly it all blew up for you online.
Yeah, so it was just over a year ago now that I kind of had the first idea for it. I'm very interested in dance music. I've enjoyed dance music for a very long time, so I wanted to kind of combine that with my interest in classical music. And yeah, began posting last year, and the interest was quite large quite quickly, which I was quite surprised by, to be honest. I didn't think many people would be interested in the organ. But yeah, I think the kind of combination of popular music like The Weeknd or like Hans Zimmer, all these things kind of brought into a new light and reinterpreted on the organ, people find quite interesting.
Yeah, and actually, there's quite a few sort of similarities, isn't there? And it works quite well. And I sort of draw the comparison with you to, Pete Tong and the Heritage Orchestra does some incredible Ibiza classics with a full-scale classical orchestra, bringing these incredible dance pieces to life as sort of classical led tracks. And that is sort of what you're doing with the organ in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the organ is a very orchestral instrument. I think there's many, many capabilities that the organ has, and I think it's just a matter of showing people that, because I think that there's kind of this idea that the organ is a very strict instrument, but actually it has many, many different things that it can do, and I think people are slowly beginning to realise that it's a varied instrument.
Absolutely, indeed. And you sort of did a piece not too long ago that sort of had a bit of a spike in interest on TikTok, because you put out a version of Zadok the Priest, which was sort of quite pertinent around the King's coronation just a few weeks back, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, there was quite a lot of interest in that, which was nice to see. But yeah, I really enjoy remixing the classical tracks into dance tracks, because I think it's combining two worlds which are very unique in their own ways, but also do work very well together.
What do you reckon King Charles would have made if, when it came to playing Zadok the Priest, he'd have played your version instead?
I think he would have loved it. He would have been up there dancing for sure.
I think he may well have been. It is incredible. You've got this concert coming to Wells Cathedral in just a couple of weeks' time. What can people expect out of the concert, Matt?
Yeah, so on the 22nd of July, I'll be performing at Wells Cathedral, and there'll be a bit of everything. I like to keep my concerts very, very varied, so there'll be a bit of classical music, because tradition is absolutely and utterly important, but also there'll be some modern music, some Hans Zimmer, some music from Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and then some dance music as well. L'amour toujours, music by Robert Miles, and there'll also be some original organ music that I've written, and also some audience participation.
Some Robert Miles. I like the idea of this. And of course, you mentioned about sort of the variety that the audience will be able to expect from your performance. Some of the traditional stuff, the classic stuff, but also some of those pop tunes done on organ too. And a bit of audience participation, perhaps?
Yes, so when I did my last concert at Downside Abbey, I asked someone from the audience to write a short 2-bar, 4-bar phrase, and then I would write a piece off the back of that. So it kind of gets people involved, which I think is quite a nice touch.
That is pretty pressured, though, isn't it? Having to sort of make something out of someone's tiny little idea.
Yeah, it really was. It was the first time I'd done it as well, so I was a bit nervous for it, but it turned out all right.
Nice. If people want to find out more about the concert, then, Matt, where do they go and find out where they can get tickets and things like that?
Yeah, so you can go to the Wells Cathedral website to get tickets if you want to watch it in person. If you can't make it in person, it's going to be recorded, and that will be available on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/ReductioMusic, and my socials are at ReductioMusic.
Brilliant stuff. It's well worth going and following out Matt on his socials, because there are some incredible videos up there. Matt, thank you very much for chatting to us this morning. It's been a real pleasure to find out a bit more about what you do and, of course, the incredible talent that you are. You've also done a rather fantastic version of Time by Hans Zimmer. Tell us a bit about this from the film Inception and why you chose to do a version of it.
Yeah, so I've always liked that film. It's a great moment at the end of that film when time comes on, and I think it works very well on the organ. I think the emotion that it creates is very, very unique, and when I first translated it, I realised how good it sounded. So yeah, I had to make it a full piece.
Let's take a listen to it. Matt, thank you so much for joining us here on BBC Radio Somerset. Isn't it? Fascinating. He's just 23 years old. He's from Frome, full-time musician. Been playing for 10 years. He's such a talent. He's got an organ scholarship at Cambridge and, of course, plays regularly at Downside Abbey too. Fantastic, isn't it? He's got that concert, Wells Cathedral, the 22nd of July. So It's just a couple of weeks, in a few Saturdays' time. Well worth going along to see that. As you heard him say there, some classics, some reimagined pop tunes played on the organ, and also some great tunes by the likes of Hans Zimmer and more too. Find out more about him. Search out Reductio Music on social media and you'll be able to watch some of his performances. What a guy. Such an incredible talent. On the way then, we've got Detroit.